Hey friends, this episode today is for you if you are wanting to start a podcast and you have been thinking about coming and joining my Podcast Bootcamp launch course. We are starting another round of Podcast Bootcamp here in the middle of April, and I want to invite you. But I know, like you, I love to hear other people's testimonials, their experiences before I make a big financial choice or decision to say yes to a course or a program. So I have invited a few of my participants who are finishing out my Podcast Bootcamp launch course from quarter one to share their experiences, their highlights, what they have learned, and you won't want to miss this episode. So if you are excited about joining the Podcast Bootcamp for this next quarter, for quarter two, and you want to hear somebody else's experience, this episode is for you. If you're a little nervous or you are a little scared about, oh man, I don't know if I'm ready yet. I don't know if I'm called to do this quite yet, then this episode is for you. I encourage you to take a moment and listen to all of these lovely ladies' experiences. Here we go. If you are a female Christian entrepreneur or life coach, you need a podcast. And if you have a podcast, you need a podcast coach. Finding a supportive and empowering community is key to podcaster success. Through my holistic approach as a trained life coach and my experience in the podcast industry since 2016, I want to encourage you weekly through answering your podcasting questions. I'm cheering for you, and your voice matters. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Holistic Podcasting. I am your podcast coach, Kristin, and I am excited for today because I feel like I have my people here with me. I have 5 beautiful faces that I get to look at that have participated in the first Podcast Bootcamp from idea to launch. And I cannot wait for you to hear their stories. So everybody, welcome on the show. All right. I have Megan Nielsen with me. I have Kristin Furman. I have Jessica Clausen. I have April Saladay and Katie Gibbons with me today. And each of them have started to launch their podcast. They started in January, a whole 9-week program that I have available for anyone who wants to start a podcast. And we have walked week by week for 9 weeks through this whole process of beginning of whether it was I have a podcast idea, but I don't know what I'm doing, to I have a podcast idea, I just have not pushed record. And so all aspects of entrepreneurs here are represented here. We have a Kingdom Life Coach. We have a homeschool educator. We have a ministry mama. We have a title resource gal, and we have a financial coach here, and many others that were not here today. So anyone can take this course. I just want to share just the victories that these women have done. They have been brave to say yes to that calling within them, and they are rounding out our time together and about to launch their podcast into the world. So first, I would love for you guys to share what was the deciding factor for you to say yes to doing a podcast boot camp. Jessica.
I felt it was something that God kept putting on my heart, and you were really great with listening to where I was at and what I needed. You and I both prayed together for a few times and just felt like God was really leading me down that path.
Awesome. What was it about doing it inside of the group aspect for you?
I'm new to business, and I'm realizing just how much I don't know. And so I realized that's probably going to be very similar for podcasting. Yes. So there was a lot that I had to learn along the way. But it was so helpful to be part of this group.
Yes. And it's been awesome to have you for sure. Okay. So this is really interesting. So Katie, who's here, she had a podcast idea and she has a whole story in itself. So can you share a little bit of your story of joining in on this boot camp and your journey prior to this boot camp?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Kristin. It has just been a joy, not only to work with you, but to be in the group really has been an unexpected, wonderful surprise. So I appreciate that, and all of you ladies, because I think that we tend to do better when you just feel like you have people on the side of you, right? So that's been cool. And maybe that's exactly what I needed and didn't even know, because I had this idea, actually, it popped up in my memories as we were starting, that I had announced to my audience that I was launching a podcast in February of 2022. And it just never got off the ground. I had content laid out. I had my podcast art cover, and I spent all of 2022 just feeling afraid and doubtful that I had anything worthy enough to share. And I had many times I thought, okay, this is going to be the month that I'm going to do it. And I think for me, what sort of scared me and what made me not jump in was I kept telling myself that it was the tech stuff. It was behind the scenes. Like if I could just figure that out, and who has time to do that? So when you came across my world, which was in, I believe, a virtual group Instagram motivational thing, right? That I found myself in through a mutual acquaintance. I saw that you were going to be doing this boot camp, and I thought, well, maybe this is it. It was just music to my ears in the moment that someone was going to actually help me get this off the ground. And when you first mentioned that you had this going on, I immediately went to this podcast and began listening to your podcast, Holistic Podcasting. And I thought, okay, I think this is the person that's going to help me get it done. And so and this group has just opened up what's possible. You've taken a lot of the tech fear away, because you've been able to just walk me and all of us step by step through, okay, this is what you should be doing this week, and this is what you're going to do next week. And I don't know, I just felt like I had a partner in that, and it's just exactly what I needed. I think so many times coaches are just say, go do this. And then even people who are very committed and work hard and understand what it takes, it's just like, yeah, but I have some questions and I can't just go do that. I need these questions answered first. So the format in which you delivered this help to us, I believe, was so vital, because you taught us, you were available for questions in Boxer, you did a question and answer session. So it's just so much more than just someone coaching me through, a weekly session.
Yeah. I love that you felt supported in that. And I think that one of the biggest things I've learned, even just doing this group, as many people as I've helped launch one-on-one, the community aspect of having a group to walk through this every week, not just having somebody who's an expert in this field. Like I have a lot of podcasting experience, but I think the beauty and the value of having other women who are going through this process too, and having so many different angles and perspectives and encouragement, and knowing you're not alone in what you're walking through is so incredibly valuable. And so I think, yeah, Katie, you hit on that really well. I mean, you had that idea of a podcast for almost a year, and then entering into a group to have that weekly support and check-ins is going to be invaluable to get it off the ground. So, and you're doing it.
Yeah. And I'm usually not a group coaching program girl. So I love how you cultivated this group. I feel like it was cultivated, and maybe you did that on purpose and maybe you didn't, but maybe that was divine powers there. But it was just the right group at the right time. So I'm thankful.
Thank you. Well, it's fun to have you in here. Okay. So Kristin, I would love to hear what do you think were some mindset shifts for you that you had to walk through that we all discovered is not a individual thing? We all were walking through the similar path. And I'd love to hear your experience on a shift in your mindset as you walked through this program.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on here for sure. This has been a true blessing. I have had having a podcast on my heart for a long time. I am a video creator, content creator, but I knew I also wanted to, dabble into the podcast world, but I didn't know how. So whenever we met in a group coaching setting, I was like, you mentioned this, and I was like, yes, like that's what I need. I need someone in a group that is going to be there to help walk me through the whole process. Because sure, I can fumble my way through and I can figure it out. I think as business owners, entrepreneurs, we do that. We think, all right, well, we can figure this out. Well, what's the most productive way for us to figure this out now? And it's having someone that has the experience, that has the knowledge, that has the plan to be able to say, okay, this is the first step. This is the next step. And having this group atmosphere has truly, truly been a blessing to be able to find that support and that community with each other. And, really talking about that mindset, like talking about how we can think about things differently. For me, it was content. It was, how can I take all of the different topics that I have? How can I create the content that comes to me and organize it in a way that I can put it out to the world? Because one thing that I realized for myself, so much content is in my heart, and I eventually get to the point of like paralyzed. Like I have so much to put out there and I didn't know where to start, so I didn't put anything out there. So by joining this group, this truly has given me that starting point to kind of go back and say, you know what, you're going to start from square one and you're just going to put your story out there. And then, it's just allowing me to kind of go back and say, this is where it all began and this is where we've come. And I'm just excited to be able to start sharing those resources and have a plan now. So that has been huge for me. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The plan part is, I think, a huge hurdle for a lot of people. And you're right. There are people that have so many ideas. They have no idea how to organize it in their brain. And then there are people that are like, what do I even talk about? And both sides of those, yes, like your voice matters in both of those. And so I love, Kristin, that you bring in the perspective of you have a very established business already. And to bring in this podcast to complement that is going to exponentially grow your business. It's already established. And so I'm excited to see how your business continues to grow through that.
Thank you. I'm excited to get these resources out to families.
Yes.
So thank you.
And in a moment, I'm gonna have everyone explain what their podcast is. So just to be continued. So Megan, I'm gonna come to you. What do you think are some highlights for you over these last 9 weeks? Because we started off as a one-on-one client and shifted into group this podcast bootcamp.
The highlight is that this actually worked. When you say idea to launch, I'm actually launching. So that's a highlight. Yes, to back it up, like you said, you and I have been friends for quite some time. And I have told you for the last several years, I would love to start a podcast. I would love to start a podcast. And I even told you, I will work with you someday. Like, I'm one of your ideal clients. Just wait.
Yeah.
And so finally, you kept saying, coaches need a podcast. If you are a service provider and you work with people, you need to get your message out there. You need a podcast. So then finally I said, okay, fine. We're going to do one-on-one coaching. And then you were launching this at the same time. And I think just divinely serendipitous, it worked out that I funneled into this group. And the highlight truly has been what these ladies have said, working together as a group. There's a group think that is super powerful and expedites ideas. So part of my hesitation in the beginning was that I just didn't know what my podcast would be called. I mean, that is an obstacle. Like, what do I even call this thing? Because is it too focused? Is it, too nebulous. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to call it. So I remember one of the calls was just titling our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And when someone said, why don't you just call it the thing that you do, which ... we'll wait until we all reveal what our podcast is. I was like, oh, you can just call a podcast like your coaching services?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So that was a huge highlight. And it's been just amazing to listen to these women, and so smart, so creative. And there's just something in a group setting where you can put an idea, an image out there or language out there. And then 2 or 3 people say, what about this? What if you shift that? What if you, and then boom, all of a sudden your idea comes to fruition. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not that you couldn't have done that for me, Kristin. I'm sure you could have, but I experienced it also in the group, and that's been an amazing highlight.
Yes, there's so much more depth to the group. And yes, I agree 100%. There's a group think that happens. Like I said, the support, the encouragement, the looking at it from a different perspective is so invaluable. April, I would love to hear from you as far as a highlight, and how have you seen already, even with your podcast not even launched yet, how this can help with networking in your field?
So one, I want to say thank you, because honestly, I met you through networking, and technically I didn't even meet you. You were providing a auction item, and somebody told me I needed to raise my hand. So I rose my hand, and I got to be a part of this great group of women who are getting out of their comfort zone and putting themselves out there and their businesses out there. So it's a great opportunity. It's been really insightful, because I think the beginning I was like, well, I really don't like the way that my voice sounds.
Mm-hmm.
I'm honest. And that's what kind of kept me. I mean, I had done Facebook videos, and I always hated it. And I'd done YouTube, and I always hated it. But honestly, the little things that I've learned is, if you have good quality equipment, you may not mind your voice so much.
Yes.
So I actually feel like I sound more like myself, one, with the equipment that I've been able to be educated on and learn a little bit about that. So that was insightful. It's definitely, for me, I'm a people person, so I like groups. I like getting involved, and that kind of leads into that networking aspect of it, because I kept having those fears of, okay, well, everybody says this is a great idea, but what's going to happen? Is it going to go anywhere? Is it going to be of any real value? And as I've been putting that information out there, not only is it being received well, but it's also connecting within the podcast community with other podcasters, other people who are trying to step out of their comfort zone, or have been out of and doing podcasts for years or whatever. And so making those connections, it actually has created a whole nother opportunity for me to network. So it's been pretty interesting. I still have those moments of fear, but that's where this group of women that are constantly feeling the same things you're feeling, and actually being able to speak about them with each other and say, hey, your voice needs to be heard. You have value. This needs to be done.
Yeah.
And they're lifting you up and encouraging you. So
yes,
that's what I have for you.
Oh, that's so good. Yes. Okay. I'm going to ask a question to everyone, and you raise your hand if you want to answer, and I'll call on you. So with that, kind of along with what you were saying, April, is what do you think that you've learned about yourself through these last 9 weeks, and something that you could share with somebody who is thinking about it, but they're scared or they feel insufficient? Jessica, what would you say to that?
So I actually really wrestled with that question. I sat down to record my first episode and immediately got hit with, who do you think you are? And immediately got hit with, why is your voice important enough for other people to need to listen to it? And I loved your response, because I came to you with it, and your response was, yes, who do you think you are? Who does God say you are? And that completely flipped everything. From there, I was able to record the first one with a lot more confidence and a lot more peace because I spent some time at God's feet and just like, okay, who do you say I am? And realizing that the fear is keeping you from what he's actually asking of you. And that's sharing your story and sharing what he's put on your heart to people who may need to hear it, who may need to hear the exact same story. So that was learning to change my mindset in this group was such a huge part of my highlights and overcoming everything and moving forward with this group.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Jessica, because I know you're not alone in that. And if I polled every woman in this group, it would be very common of who am I to start a podcast. And I think maybe you're not human if you haven't asked that question, because it is such a human response. And I love how you have continuously gone after, like, yeah, who am I? And everyone has done the courageous thing. And so, just, it so moves me that, when we think that we're launching this project and it's just the project, it's really not. It's actually a deep, wholehearted work that you're doing, because it takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there, and you learn a ton along the way. Katie, I'm going to go to you next because you just raised your hand. I would love to hear your comment on that too.
Yeah, I think for me, what I learned about myself was that I would almost have a lot of guilt or shame because I wasn't consistent in whatever content that I was creating. So whether that was on social media, whether that was on, blogging. And so I would beat myself up about being inconsistent because as well as I do, in this space, you have to be consistent. Like that's the number one goal, right? Just be consistent. What I realized is that I think I have maybe been creating the wrong content and that's why I haven't been consistent. I was so overwhelmingly excited to start recording. Once I got past the fear of pressing record, then I couldn't stop. I was like, I actually love creating this content, and that is what's going to help me be consistent. So I think for me, it was really identifying, although I've been putting this off for so long, it's really the most enjoyable content that I've had in terms of creating. So I'm hopeful that I'll be more consistent and be able to show up for the people that need to hear me and hear my podcast. And so that's what I feel like I've learned about myself, that when you enjoy the content that you're creating, you show up and do it in a different way.
Yeah. And I saw you do that in real time. It was awesome. Like once everything clicked into place, you were like, I'm going to go record 4 episodes in a row. So yes, absolutely. That alignment is so important. Megan, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I definitely resonate with the consistency piece. You and I had a call in which you were like point blank asking me, what is stopping you from doing this? And when I really dug deep, I said, I think it's the fear of commitment, because I know when I say I'm doing this, and like Katie said, it needs to be consistent, whether that's weekly or biweekly, whatever, that all of a sudden I'm accountable to somebody, myself. And before, if I would go on a Facebook Live or write a newsletter content, it's whenever I want, whatever I want. And so there was this like sort of beautiful, like bohemian vibe to it. Like, I'll just create whatever I want to. And so being consistent. And then the second thing I've learned is that I think an idea of perfectionism, this is not new information for me, but I've always been kind of a perfectionist to the point of like, I've learned that I can do this imperfectly consistently, like imperfect consistency, because for some reason in my mind, I thought podcasts had to be real buttoned up and dialed in and polished up, because that's how they sound when I'm listening to them, which is actually great. So thanks to a good podcast coach, right? An editor. But I was afraid if I don't have all my ducks in a row and have every little detail figured out of what I'm going to say and how I'm going to say it, then I just shouldn't do it. So I had to push through that barrier and realize I just need to hit record, talk for 15 minutes, stop, and move on, or nothing's going to happen. So I had to get in that space.
And we're all shaking our heads.
Yes,
we're all nodding
nodding.
because we could have said that exact thing.
Yep.
I think all of us.
Totally. 100%. All right. Yeah, that's good. And Megan, it's been fun to watch that too. Just that process of I'm going to commit imperfectly. And that's a beautiful place to be in, the bohemian relationship. Yes, we are committed to our podcast and it doesn't have to be scary. Kristin, what would you like to say?
I would like to add that one of the big pieces and takeaway that I had was this is the long game. Creating our content is not just, all right, I have to create it as quick as I can. Like we're in this now for the long game and my content is just going to continue to grow. And that was a piece for me that was so powerful because as we did a content planning and we were like, we have content for the whole year, just by sitting down and mapping things out, we realized like we have enough content to sustain us for the long game. So that was really awesome. And just being in this group, it really helped me to come to my faith even deeper, to be able to say, all right, Lord, what do you want me to share? What is the story? What do you need me to put first? And it just continued to help me continue to grow and really get my story out there. Like, what is it that he wants me to talk about?
Yeah.
And it was just really awesome to kind of see that in my life, that transformation continue to grow. So
yeah,
it's just been wonderful overall.
Oh, that's so good. Yes. I love, again, it's that alignment, really checking in with where God's calling us and what's the passion in our heart and where he's calling us to cause ripples in our life and really get ourselves out there in our business and our networking and coaching, families, all of it. So, okay, y'all are awesome. Thanks for sharing all of your experiences. And you guys, there's so much more to this boot camp that I feel like we could talk for an hour. Even the things that I've learned as a podcast coach and let alone all of your stories. And so on that note, I want to have a second for you guys to share your podcast and where people can find you. And this is so exciting. So I'm going to start with April. Why don't you go ahead and share your podcast name and when you're going to be available?
So my podcast is Colorado Title Resource Gal with April Saladay. And I should be launching in April. So I'm hoping at the 10th. I haven't made that commitment yet, but that's where it looks like it's landing fairly easily. So, and it's an opportunity for me to educate our community, an opportunity to help our community connect with each other outside of just the day-to-day things, whether it's through networking or it's, different resources available to them in the community to help them within their business, as well as encouragement, because our industry can be very negative and very almost gobble you up and spit you out kind of industry. And so I've seen a lot of the negativity take people out of the business. And I just want to be a space where I can encourage and keep them going.
Awesome. You are a bright light in that space. So I can't wait for people to have that as a resource.
Thank you.
Megan?
So I have the Kingdom Life Coaching Podcast coming out April 4th is when it launches. And it really is this intersection of life and faith. And the thing that inspires me all the time is really to help people kind of quiet the noise of their life, because there's so much external influence coming at us all the time with media and, everything, all the voices coming into our lives. And so I spend a lot of time here just really helping people get aligned with who does God say that you are? What is he calling you into? And what's the next right step for you to do that so that you can be clear and confident and walk purposely with joy and peace, because you know that you're walking in what he's called you to do. So we'll spend a lot of time diving into that.
Awesome. Go check it out. It's going to be great. So, can't wait. So many things about Megan's that it's so near and dear to my heart too, from my holistic hearts world. And so I'm excited to have a Kingdom Life Coach podcast out there for so many people that are hungry for that. Okay, Jessica, you're up.
Thank you. My podcast is called the Connected Faith Podcast, with a tagline that we are exploring the ripples that we cast. My heart really is for people to realize that we, as a body of believers, we're all interconnected. You'll hear the phrase a lot that it's a small world, especially in the Christian community. And I also want you to realize too that God is going to use you where you're at to cast ripples in other people's lives. God can use you today just in how you act and talk and speak and interact with others that can change someone's life without you even being aware of it. So I want to help inspire people and encourage people to allow them to say, God, this is what I have. What do you want to use with it? How do you want to impact those around me? Both your physical neighbors, your families, and the people you interact with.
Yes. And this is such an extension of who Jessica is. She is very much all about casting ripples of encouragement. And this is going to be so amazing to just send out into the community to support one another, encourage one another. And she's got an amazing story too. That first episode was so good. So
thank you.
Plug. All right, Kristin, you're next.
Thank you. Mine is called the EduPlay Learning, Educating Kids and Equipping Families podcast. So I am a homeschool mom, an educator with over 15 years, and I really help families be able to educate their kids in fun, meaningful, and individualized ways. And I do that through a lot of hands-on activities, experiences, and learning, real-life learning, as well as helping families by providing them with resources, expert advice, and just really helping to decrease any overwhelm on their journey of parenthood.
I could use some decreasing the overwhelm of the parenting journey. Yes. I'm excited for your podcast. It's so much so. I mean, I've already shared your podcast without it even being out. So I'm excited for all of the women that I know that are homeschool moms and moms that are wanting to have that support and, again, encouragement. So excited for you. All right, Katie.
Yes. So mine is the Unmasked Money podcast. It's really for the woman in business who's ready to take the lead in her finances. So I've been a banker and financial consultant for over 20 years, and working with women and money, I discovered how important it is to have a healthy relationship and to deal head on with the very unique financial challenges that women have. And so each week we're going to look at not only the practical, tactical things that you need to know about money, but also the emotions that is surrounded with managing money, because I think it's important for women to have all of that, both the emotional and the practical, tactical stuff, so that they can be confident when they are making financial decisions, no matter at what part they are in their lives. So I am just excited to share a lot of stories from people that I've helped and really just inspire you to have a healthy relationship with money.
Oh, so needed. I mean, golly, every woman needs to go listen to your podcast because it's so needed and it's empowering, and you do it in such a gentle way. I mean, the beauty of having a corporate, as we've talked about many times, that corporate Katie and the homeschool mom Katie, and you weave those in so beautifully. So yes, can't wait for that podcast to be out in the public ear. All right. Well, ladies, thank you so much for taking time to be on this episode and to share your heart and what you have learned throughout this podcast bootcamp. Again, it's been an honor to be alongside you guys as you develop this gift for the world. So stay tuned, everybody. Check out all of their episodes. I'll post all of the links in the show notes. And thanks for coming on today. Hey, thanks for listening today. I hope that you feel encouraged and inspired to launch and grow your podcast. And speaking of that, I want to personally invite you, if you are thinking about starting a podcast or you're thinking about growing your current podcast, I have an amazing opportunity coming up in the middle of April, inviting you into our Podcast Bootcamp. The first one is for new podcasters who are looking to launch and create their brand new podcast. And the second is going to be for current podcasters who want to grow and monetize their podcast. Come check it out at www.kristinfieldschadwick.com, or you can find me on Instagram and send me a message and that you want to know more.